Empire. Has the highlight superseded the game?
And we train the AI to understand every single thing about the sport. So it knows basketball. It's watched so many games of NBA games. It knows the sport probably better than all of us.
That's David Gavant, business development executive with WSC Sports, the backbone of the instant dissemination of highlights on social media worldwide. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein. David Gavant has an extensive background in building digital arms for traditional outlets, but these days, he is full meta when it comes to the future of engagement. And with younger fans opting for mobile and snackable sports experiences, it begs the question, are the games only there to produce the more valuable asset? Our guest this week is David Gavant. He's a business development executive with WSC Sports, which is a group that if you are watching highlights on the internet, it is likely that WSC Sports was the function behind it that created all of that. They're an AI technology company based in Israel, and they are moving forward with the future of sports content. Hey, David, how are you?
I'm doing well, Bram. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. All right. Take me through your background a little bit, because you have an extensive background in traditional linear and cable television production that's kind of led you to this point where you're working with this group.
Yes, that's true. So I started out my career in high school. I grew up in Atlanta, and I started working for CNN Sports as an intern. And basically, I lived there. If they would have had a bed there, I would have slept there. It was just basically my film school all through high school and college. And I started out as a game logger. And it was basically, if you're watching a baseball game, you would have a piece of paper. You write out the top of the first inning. You write out what the batter did, the first batter did. You mark down on where the event happened on the tape. And you'd log the entire game. And then at the end of the game, you go take it into an editor, and you'd give him the log sheet, and he would actually queue up the tape to specific events that where he wanted to include in his highlight package. So basically, a 5-minute highlight package would take about 45 minutes to an hour to cut. But that highlights the logging information that translates today into a data feed. So you might have heard like the sports radars or the geniuses or the stats perform. They're actually providing a data feed that contains all that logging information that happens in events in a game. So it could be the time of the game, the player in the game, what the action was that the player did. And then I moved on to a production assistant at CNN, and it was basically finding great shots for those editors to use. Maybe it wasn't features, maybe it wasn't promos, maybe it was and more highlights that were being cut. And that was basically, again, something that our technology does. It automatically rates plays 1 through 5. So it's basically like having a production assistant that back in the old times would go back and kind of like find the best plays and tell the editors what to do. And then I became an editor. So that's where I'd be taking all the logging information. I'd be taking all the recommendations from the production assistants, and literally be spending that amount of time to cut a highlight package. So everything that I just described to you right now takes maybe 90 seconds to do, and that's being very conservative. And our AI will do all that which I just described and do it automatically. So having that background of starting out as a logger, then a production assistant, and as an editor really gave me a holistic view of the manual process that goes into getting highlights to air. So again, so what used to take 45 literally will take 5 clicks of a button, and you're done in a minute to 90 seconds. After I graduated college, I moved on to the NBA, where I ran their commercial division. You might have heard of this campaign called "I Love This Game."
Yeah,
we produced about 100 spots per year. Also produced a show called Inside Stuff early on in the 90s.
Summer Sanders. That's Summer Sanders, right?
That's right. Yes, Sanders.
Yeah.
Yep. After her great performance in the '92 Olympics in the pool, she came over and worked on that show for a while, and also produced a number of live events, including the draft lottery and some of the USA Basketball Dream Team selection shows. So had a really great run at the NBA. Did a lot of work with a guy named Michael Jordan, So a lot of the, Michael Jordan Come Fly With Me, some of the big highlight tapes that a lot of people might be familiar with, being able to watch Jordan live was really, now looking back on it, was such a great honor to be able to see somebody. I think I saw him play about 80 times over my career at the NBA. And then right when Jordan left, I said, okay, maybe this would be a good time to transition. And I went over to Major League Baseball, where I ran MLB Productions for about 16 years.
Just like Michael Jordan, you left to go to baseball. Look at you.
That's right. And just like Jordan, I couldn't hit the curve either. But I was able to have a pretty good career over at Major League Baseball as part of Bud Selig's administration running MLB Productions. We had about 150 people, comprised of producers, editors, directors, writers, cinematographers, loggers, you name it. We produced about 5,000 hours of content for Showtime, HBO. We did This Week in Baseball for Fox, and it was a great time to be at baseball. And then a couple of years ago, I was hearing about this company that was using AI to automatically cut highlights in real time. And at first, I didn't believe it. I said, I won't use the verbiage that I actually use, but I said I got to find out more information about this company. And when I was interviewing with the founders of WSC Sports, it happened to be the finals of the Men's Australia Open, which has been in the news recently, but the finals a couple of years ago. And they say, hey, you want to see every drop shot that happened in the men's tournament over the last 2 weeks? I go, yeah. Literally within 5 seconds, there were 35 drop shots right in front of me, highlights with perfect ins and perfect outs, as if a real editor had cut it. And it just completely blew me away. And I just said, listen, I know I have a production background. I want to come on board. This technology is just incredible. Please find a place for me. And that's the story of how I got to WSC Sports.
As a total aside, my first job out of college was also at CNN, but it was in CNN Washington. I also was essentially, as you called it, they called it a production assistant at that time, a PA, but I was a logger. But I didn't do the fun stuff. I was basically forced to watch C-SPAN all day and log congressional hearings and go back to them and tell the producers when somebody said something that I thought was interesting. So
wow.
If you could automate that, that'd be wonderful, actually.
Wow. So you were the true epitome of just get your foot in the door.
Correct.
And take it from there, because or else I hope you were drinking coffee, right out of college, because watching C-SPAN all day long, that's good for you.
It's quite possible I'm one of 10 people in American history to watch all of the Ruby Ridge hearings start to finish. It's possible that I'm one of a few people have actually done that.
I didn't see that on your resume, though.
Yeah, maybe I should put it up there. It does say, now when I say it, it actually sounds impressive.
It does, yeah.
All right. So, let's get into what WSC does. So, I'll give you an example. Just the other day, my favorite basketball team, the Washington Wizards, played a matinee game. Kyle Kuzma has a very memorable dunk in the middle of it over Joel Embiid. Is that you guys turning that around like automatically and making that happen on the internet?
Yeah. So what's really cool about the technology, what really makes WSC special is our automation. So basically, we've trained the AI. We work in sports in our repertoire, and we train the AI to understand every single thing about the sport. So it knows basketball. It's watched so many games of NBA games. It knows the sport probably better than all of us. So what we've taught the AI to do is set rules in advance. So when X happens to do Y. So when that play happened, if that was a rule, which it probably was in the system, it'll automatically cut that highlight and literally it'll pick that play within 5 seconds, and then it'll take another several seconds to encode it, and it will deliver it to any of your social media distribution points. You want to send it, it'll send the highlight to Twitter, it'll send it to Facebook, it'll send it to YouTube, wherever you want. It'll send it immediately the moment that play happens. And so within within seconds of that play happening on the court, it'll show up on your social media feed.
I have to assume that there was some trial and error, right, along the way here. And maybe this is previous to when you showed up to this, because I could imagine the AI is just flooding social media with some things that wouldn't even fall into the category of highlights, right? I mean, did it take some time to kind of figure out how to hone this so it's getting the right type of content put out there?
Well, it's using 3 indicators. And so that's why, it was a little bit before my time, so I don't have that information. All I know is that the AI is looking at 3 indicators to make sure that the highlight is absolutely perfect. So, for example, it's listening to the play-by-play announcer, the inflection of the play-by-play announcer, if they're getting excited. It's listening to the nat sound, the crowd in the background. So if there's a swell after a play, the AI knows, oh wow, this is a big moment, I need to pay attention to it. All right, and then it's also on that out point of a highlight clip. It knows that it's not, when it's listening to the announcer, it's not listening to language. It's language agnostic. So a goal in Spanish for soccer, it might go on for 30 seconds. You're like, goal. The AI will not upcut the audio for that play. But that same play in English might only last 15 seconds. So depending on what our customers are using, what language they're using, it'll cut 2 different highlight clips for the same play based on one of the inflection points in the audio. The AI is also looking at everything on screen that it can take away and consume as information. So it's looking at the clock, it's looking at the scoreboard, or in golf, the leaderboard. It's looking at any kind of graphical information. It's looking at camera cuts. It's looking at close-up of players. And then it's also using that rich data feed. So when I was talking earlier about logging, and when you were logging C-SPAN, we don't really need loggers anymore for the stuff that happens on the court, because that data feed from the sports radars of the world, the geniuses of the world, that data feed is taking care of that. And so what the AI is doing instantly is combining all 3 of those elements, and from there it's able to not only create a perfect clip with a perfect in and a perfect out, but it'll rate that play 1 through 5, with 5 being the best of the best. So if I want to create a highlight package, but I only want to see 4 stars and above, I can set that rule in advance. When this game is over, I want to see all the 4-star plays. The moment the final clock, the final buzzer rings, send those plays to these 10 distribution points around the world. Huh. What's also really cool is that it's kind of transformed the NBA's international business. It's my understanding that before working with us, the NBA would send the 50 best highlights from the night all over the world. Now, if they have a customer in the Philippines who want just a specific set of highlights from the favorite player in the region, they can set rules in advance to say, when this game is over, send this highlight video to this region, send this highlight video to that region of the world. It doesn't matter. You set the rules and it just does it automatically.
It's pretty wild. The one thing that I think the next step, and I don't know if you guys are in this space or if it matters because of the immediacy of what you're doing, is doesn't a human still need to tell the story of a game? In the end, like, don't we need our expertise to explain what happened there as opposed to the box score and just the highlights that can be automated along the way?
100%. You're absolutely correct. And that's why our system comes with, so really the magic is the automation. But if you look at our platform, we have 2 systems. We have this automatic magical system called AVGen, Automatic Video Generator. But what's also connected to it is this other system called Clip Pro, which is our manual editing system. It's basically where a human goes in. Listen, we don't know the region as good as someone in Washington might know the sports in that area. We don't know the AI is will only focus on the data that happens on the field or on the court or on the course. So it's not necessarily looking at crowd shots, or players diving into the stands and spilling beer, or reaction shots after somebody misses a free throw. So we give the ability to go in and manually tweak the videos that are created automatically to input more context on the knowledge of the people in the region or in the sport or in the local market. So we give it the ultimate control of speed with the automatic creation of those videos, but then you can actually drop those videos into your timeline on ClipPro and adjust it as needed based on the knowledge of a human being and trying to tell the story better.
This is obviously an unbelievably modern tool that you are using here. As you work with your partners either in OTT or the linear spaces, and they're using this to have more engagement with younger audiences, how do they hope to work with you to get back to what I would assume is still their ultimate goal of driving people back to watching longer portions of games?
So the way we look at it is that games are the full meal, and highlights are just the appetizer. So the best way to describe it is that the demand for highlights is just increasing, and so and there's a real opportunity within the industry to deliver on that growing appetite for personalized highlights that fans really want to consume on the device of their choice at the time of their choosing. So the demand for highlights used to be, the best way to kind of visualize this is imagine the demand for highlights used to come up to your shoulders, and that demand could be fulfilled by existing staff. So now that demand is like 4 feet over your head and growing, and there's no way this demand can be met with anything other than automation. So we like to say that it's no longer video on command, but the marketplace and the consumers and the younger audience, they're demanding video on command. So really tech now is that best option to deliver that insatiable appetite for highlights at scale that's only growing. But to be clear, that I strongly believe that highlights are just an enticement to really draw attention to your content. And there's still a great need to personalize this content for that younger generation of fans who are just consuming sports differently.
Yeah. So that it goes to the broad question of, and this goes for everything, forget just sports, is long form anything dead? I don't think we know the answer to that, right? Do we? Do we know the answer to that?
I don't think long form is dead. It's just that young fans are not used to sitting and watching full games now. So instead, they're hanging out on different platforms and that all have different experiences. So right now, it's really up to the rights holders of the live sports to meet those younger fans at the places where they're hanging out, and either get them to come sample the live games or to watch the live games in conjunction, like that second and third screen experience. One of the cool things that we're offering is a product called video push notification, for example. So we're kind of taking advantage of the FOMO, fear of missing out. So what happens is our automation can literally 10 times a game, when some big moment happens, can send viewers a text message on their cell phone with the highlight of that big moment that happened in the game, with a deep link that'll take you back to the live broadcast, either on the OTT channel or on the web or what have you. So it's really using technology to kind of drive. It's not only about viewership, it's about engagement. It's about getting those younger generation of fans to engage with your content, whether that be through highlights, whether it be through watching the live game, whether it be through sampling the live game. It's really trying to give the rights holders a wide variety of tools to help them reach their fans where they are right now.
Do you foresee, considering you have this technology and you could work with a multitude of partners who have rights, do you foresee a time where there are a lot of platforms that have highlight rights but no real game rights, and that is how the rights are divvied up amongst the leagues and its partners?
Yeah, that's a great point. We are creating a different kind of classification, asset classification. that if leagues wanted to in the future, they could carve out these rights. I think digital rights are so broad in some of these agreements now that highlight rights are included. But because technology is able to deliver, one of the other cool things that we're working with rights holders with it's a product called WSC Stories. So we're working directly with Google that puts highlights directly on Google One Box, which is the search area of Google. And so what happens is like I wanted to see NFL highlights, and I missed some of the games, some of the playoff games. So I just punched up in Google NFL highlights, and it took me to the NFL page. And if you look now on the bottom right-hand corner of every score, you have a highlight package that you can click on that we're helping partners to create. And so now that's an area that's creating this new asset classification for highlights. So not only is the demand for highlights, but you're absolutely right. There could be, all these deals are kind of locked up through, for the next 10 years, but there will be a time where this will become like a different asset classification that leagues especially will be able to offer.
And based on your background as well, I think this is a major year for rights. I think we're seeing things like Amazon and Google and new large behemoth type players come into the space for broadcasting rights in whatever form that actually ends up taking. Just based off your long background, how do you see sports content in the future when groups like that will be owning massive chunks of rights?
Well, if you kind of take a look at some of the tech companies, if you remember like 3 or 4 years ago when a lot of the broadcast contracts were up, all the leagues were begging these big tech companies to come in and become another competitor to help drive up the cost of rights. And they never did. Amazon, Apple, Google, they definitely have the market capitalization to come in and just kind of write a blank check for whatever they wanted. But they were very, very cautious and have really just taken a long-term, let's dip our toe in the water approach. Now you're starting to see it shake out a little bit more. But and so you're starting to see like Amazon is going to be producing Thursday Night Football themselves next year. You've heard Apple is the rumors are that they're going to make a deal for Major League Baseball content.
Yeah.
What we've found, and this is something that hasn't changed in sports for the last 30 years, is that sports drives engagement. Because it's really, as storytellers, sports is the only real. This is what David Stern used to say. It's basically, sports is the only thing that is unscripted. You just never know the outcome of any event. And so that's why people watch. So it's still true to this day and that's not going to change no matter who's broadcasting it. It's that sports are popular because it's unscripted. You never know who's going to win. That's why you play the game, because, if it was based on who was going to win, based on the procrastinators and the people that are kind of judging what the score is going to be, then why even watch? So for the storytelling aspect of sports, that's never going to go away, and I think that's one reason why it's still attractive as properties for these big tech companies. The
original reality TV, that was always the script that was there. Okay, one other big broad question, and then I'll let you go. How do you see your company working with the influx of gambling operators and fantasy sports operators that are clearly going to have a big say in content as we move forward?
You know what? We're video engagement. The video helps drive engagement. So the perfect example is for some of these big betting operators that have deals with the leagues now. So it used to be that when a big moment happened in a game, they would just send out a text message, to their customers on their mobile phones, right? And so what we found is, and again, this isn't rocket science. It's like 80% of betting takes place on mobile phones, and 80% takes place, during live games, and that betting is taking place on mobile phones. So when I was telling you earlier about push notifications and attaching video to that push notification, we're also helping the betting companies do that. And there's just been so much more engagement when you have video of a big moment attached to a push notification than just text based as well. So they're going to be having different betting companies are going to have different abilities now because they are getting in-game rights to use highlights, and that's just going to help drive people to come play the game or bet on the game or what have you. So technology is definitely there, and it has the ability to really help drive that business.
It's all really interesting. David Gavant from WSC Sports, thank you so much for joining us.
Ran, my pleasure.
On the next Future Sport podcast, maybe distribution of longer form content isn't really going anywhere.
Everybody's gotten more comfortable on smaller screens, and that will continue to be a trend. There will be no shortages of iPhones and iPads and other smaller form factors, but content will still be distributed at scale on the TVs, and I believe there will always be types of programming that will have a very large audience for all generations.
That's John Cohen, Senior Vice President of Business Development and Distribution at Frequency, where finding space in the crowded sports space is their mission. That will do it for this episode. As always, the future is now. This is the Future Sport Podcast. I'm Bram Weinstein.